So for the past 4 videos, I have been using footage I recorded in Harmony 17 because I think I did a better job explaining stuff. But since I ran out, going forward, we'll be using Harmony 20. So, right. In this video, we're going to go through the animation tools, are the most important ones at least, for this introductory course. So first off, when you want to animate in Harmony, you're going to want to have this enabled on the left. Animate current frame. In older versions, about version 16 and below, I believe, or 15, it's going to just be a singular button and you click it and it switches to animate off or animate on, right? Newer versions will have this drop down menu here with these 3 options. We're only going to be focusing on the first 2 that I mentioned, right? So this one and this one. Good. So what this does is it allows us to animate automatically wherever we are in the timeline. And we set up a scene here. I'll go ahead and click play. So you can see it's just a simple pendulum. Pretty sweet. So now to animate this, I did not draw the rope and the ball every frame, right? I did not draw the rope and the ball every frame in this manner. I actually used what is called a peg. So I'm going to go over to the node view and you can see this setup here, right? Just make it a little bigger. So we have a ball, a string, and this green thing up here. We know these are drawings, right? We've done these before in previous videos, but this is a peg. And what pegs are they're nodes that allow you to move drawings but do not actually contain drawings in them. So if I click this, there's not going to be anything in here. Well, I mean, I can't do anything. So it's just like a handle or a container. And to give you a better explanation, I guess, would be to go into the past. So back in the day, not in my day, but somebody's day, there were animation desks and they would have this setup where you would put the paper on it, right? If we zoom in here, you can see that there are these 3 holes here and each paper would be reset technically, right? So it'd be in the same position so that whatever you animate would move and the paper wouldn't move, if that makes sense. So these were called peg holes. And these held the paper in place while you draw and you flip and change papers. So in Harmony, they actually kind of recreated that in 2 ways. So one, you have the actual peg. And then if you hold Control and Alt in the camera view or the drawing view, click and drag to rotate, you can see that there's this kind of, digital pegboard animation desk. So I thought that was a cool nod to the good old days, right? So Shift X to reset your camera. And we're going to go into the more practical side of the peg. So what I meant was if we scrub the timeline here, right, if we press play, you can see it swinging, right? And this happened because I animated the peg, not the drawings. So if I pause on this frame and click the string, you see it's at an angle. But if I go into the drawing view, you can see it's actually straight. Let me change the color of this to make it a bit easier to see, right? Okay. So you can see it's actually straight. It's not slanted. And this is because, as I said, we didn't edit any drawings. We just controlled them with the peg. And to control it with the peg, we use the transform tool, which can be found here on the left. All right. So if I click the peg, I can move it with the transform tool. I can go to the corner and rotate it. I can scale it, and I can skew it. Oh, and I can skew it. So it's a Swiss knife, I guess, of tools all in one. And it allows you to animate and scale and do all these cool things with the pegs. So now that I've shown you that, I would like to just clarify something really quick. All right. So we went through the drawing tools 2 videos before, right? And now we're going through the animation tools. So the transform tool should not be confused with the select tool. They technically do the same thing, but the select tool does it to the drawing. So if I click the ball and I select it and I do that, right? That's the select tool. I have now changed the drawing itself, right? If I come down here to the transform tool, or even if I scrub, that drawing has been changed permanently. So make sure you're on the correct tool when you're animating. I've made that mistake before. All right, so one other setting I'll show you before I continue. Some people like to have the rotation in a specific place all the time, right? As opposed to trying to find a corner, you know? And if you go to Edit, Preferences, you can see here to, oh, sorry, camera. You can see here it says use rotation lever with transform tools. So if we click that, click OK, this little thing sticks out, right? And you can rotate from here and only from here. Some people like that. I don't like it. It limits the it makes it sensitive sometimes and then not sensitive, so not really a huge fan, right? Because it's always, anyway. So I'll just go to Edit, Preferences, and Camera. Turn that back off. Back to normal. All right, so I would like to go through some more animation tools, and those are called the advanced animation tools, and they will be found at the top. You can see this bar of blue icons. If you don't have this, you just need to right click and click advanced animation. So these tools, I'm only going to cover the first 3 because it is a beginner course and I want to keep the video relatively short, or as short as possible. So if we hover, you can see we have the translate tool, the rotate tool, and the scale tool, and the others. So what Harmony did is they basically split up the transform tool into 4 tools, right? So if I click the translate tool, you see this little icon with the 2 axes here, the y-axis and the x-axis. But the difference is, unlike the transform tool, I can click anywhere in the camera view to move it. Anywhere. I can click from here, here, anywhere. And that is quite nice. It's not as fast because you have to go to the shortcut and stuff, but it is actually quite nice. Continuing is the rotate tool. If we click that, this is the one I use the most of the advanced animation tools. And because, like I said, you can click from anywhere to use the tool, that is really useful for rotation. So I can, if I want a really small increment, I can just do that from here and get really precise. This tool is really useful for precise, very precise movements. All of them are useful for that because they all do one thing instead of like four things. So as you may have guessed, the next one scales from anywhere, as I said. You can click on the axes to focus it into one direction. This is the tool I use the least. And well, that is basically it, right? There's one other important part of the advanced animation tools that basically everyone in the industry kind of uses it for. Let me just undo. And that is pivot placement. And what I mean is, as you can see here, the pivot is at the top, right? That's why it swings so nicely. If I move this here, I can now rotate it from the middle, right? Obviously, because I moved the pivot. But the difference is I just moved the pivot permanently. So this is now where the pivot lives, like all the time. So if I change the tool here, change the tool, it doesn't move. If I go to the transform tool, it still doesn't move because I moved the pivot permanently. And that is very useful when you're rigging or creating a rig. You wouldn't want to change the pivot when you're animating, and I'll show you why. So let's say I changed it here. If I play, you can see, wait, oops, let me delete that one. Right, if I press play here, you can see the thing is rotating kind of weird, and that's because I changed the pivot permanently, which is not something you want to do when you're animating, at least. And a nice solution for that is to change the pivot temporarily. So let me undo what I've done. Undo. Right. And to do that, you can't use the advanced animation tools because they change it permanently. If you go in the properties, you can see pivot down here. They change it, right? So undo that. So go to the transform tool. Now, if I'm doing this, like, yeah, good stuff, right? And I click this and move it to, I don't know, rotate it like this on this frame. You can see there's a shadow or kind of a ghost of where the pivot is, right? And that's there to tell the animator or the user that this is where the pivot actually lives. What you're doing is moving it temporary for what you're trying to do. But when you click off and then click back on, it's going to jump back there, right? Click the peg. It's going to go back there. And that is as simple as it looks. That's pretty legit. Okay. That is pretty nice. So let's just undo that. Press play, look at it again. Shift M, reset. And I want to add some life to this animation, or some realism, I guess, right? And to do that, I'm going to add a deformer. Yeah, that's right. A deformer, and that is going to do exactly what it says. It's going to deform whatever I put it on. And what I want to put it on is the string. So I'll select the string and go up here to the top where it says rigging tool. Let's click that and go into your tool properties panel, and you're going to see some options here. I'm not going to go through all of them right now for obvious reasons, being keeping the video short. And we want to click this here. Oops, curve mode. So if we click that, we're now going to be able to draw a curve deformer. So click for the first point and drag. I'm gonna drag it like that. For the second point, you want to click and drag backward. All right. Release. So before you start going crazy, we have to click the transform tool, or else it's still in edit mode, right? So click transform tool, and now we have a deformer. You can see it created a new node here, a new group. And if I do this, I can now bend. Oh, I made it short. Anyway, I can now bend the string. Pretty sweet, right? So making sure animation is on, I can now set some keyframes for this string. So I can click here, click the keyframe button, I'll press F6. And then somewhere around here, if I did that, right, it automatically created the keyframe for me, right? And when it gets here, I can adjust it, right? Just a little bit. So now it swings. You see? Very nice, right? And then coming back, somewhere here, can bend it. Hold the S a little bit here. And this is where we started. Just to cheat, we can click this, hold Control, and then click and drag it to the end to copy and paste it. So when we click that, you can see I now added some nice, right, Shift M, sorry, press play, and I just added some nice sway to the string. Pretty sweet, right? We can take this a step further with the ball. So let me show you another deformer. Zoom in here a bit and click the rigging tool. And we want to click envelope mode. Click that. Let's start here. To remove the preview of the other deformer, let's just click this, hide all controls. And let's click and drag from the pivot. Click and drag here. Remember to drag back to the previous point instead of away, because it does that. Drag this, go to this. Just a simple 4-point deformer. If you placed it badly, you can just adjust it with the handles. Should be familiar. Whoops, undo. You should be familiar with these handles because they're the same as the contour editor. And for the last point, hold Alt, and you will see the plus turn to like a target. That means it's going to close the shape. All right, this looks good. Click the transform tool, and now we can do some cool stuff. So at this point, I want the ball to look like that. So I'll just click here and click F6. Come forward here where it's being dragged. Maybe even here. And I'm going to deform the circle in just kind of a funny way, just to show that it's being dragged by gravity, I guess. All right. And then, oops, so when it reaches the top, it should be a circle again. So instead of trying to figure out, how to make a circle, we can do what we did earlier and click the first point, hold Control, click and drag, and we have our starting point where it was. If you don't want to do that, or if you lost the keyframe, undo, you can click this and click this button at the top, which is reset current keyframe, and it resets it. So you can do that. Actually, I'm going to move this forward a little bit, right? And when it comes here, I'm going to do something similar to what I did before. Right. Oops. And copy and paste, control, drag that over there. So if we press play, we have a nice drag to the pendulum. I like that actually. That looks kind of nice. So that is a quick overview of the deformers in Harmony. And so I actually went through all of this somehow without explaining what a keyframe is and how to use them. And basically what a keyframe is in Harmony, or most programs at least, it is a point at which you save information about an object, a point in time, right? So this black line down here shows that that Harmony is in betweening the positions for us. So they're creating all the in-betweens in order to create this animation for us. And that was done automatically because we have the setting up here at the top, animation, stop motion keyframe disabled. And that is because there are two types of keyframes in Harmony: stop motion keyframes and motion keyframes, which us in the industry call tweening. So these are motion keyframes. So by default, you should be creating these types of keyframes when you keyframe anything. Wow, said keyframe a lot there. So to create that, I will show you shortly how I set up this scene all together. So I'm gonna do something scary. Let's save. Something scary, delete. Gone. So how I created this scene was I created the drawing first. So Control R, called it ball. Add, just press enter to add and keep adding. And string, enter, close. So let's bring this out here, ball and string. Plug these in. So you click ball and click and hold on the rectangle tool, click the ellipse, and created a ball, right? So hold shift. We've been here before. We know how to use the drawing tools. So click and drag, hold shift, R if you want to be fancy, hold alt and shift to create it from the center. Let's click color, and you know what, whatever, just keep it like that. Hold I to paint the ball, shortcut. Okay, so click string, and let's pan up here a little bit and use the rectangle tool. Similarly, click here, hold alt, create a string, right? Hold I, and we have the string and the ball. I just used a different color, whatever. So if we go to the transform tool, you can see I have these, but we can't move them. If you use the settings that I would have talked about in the first video. If you haven't watched that video, you can probably move them. And quickly, the setting I'm talking about, edit preferences, advanced, this setting, it is off. It's usually off in basically every studio I've worked at. So cancel. So we can't move them, and that is for your own good. So what I did next is I went into the node view and pressed Control P. If you press that, that will create a peg. Another way to create a peg, undo, is to go to the timeline and click that button right here. Click. Wait a minute. Right, my bad. Make sure you have a drawing selected when you use the timeline shortcut, right? Create a peg. I don't like it because it's messy, so undo that. And the final way is to go in the node library, and you see peg here in your favorites, or you can click the bar and type in peg. You can drag that into the node view. So those are 3 ways to create pegs, right? So let's just, well, we have a peg. So I'll plug in one here and plug in one here. So now we have the peg that I had. To get the pivot at the top, well, I kind of showed you how to do that already, didn't I? So you click one of the animation tools. So I use Alt 3 as the shortcut for the rotate tool, and I move that pivot all the way to the top, right? Click back to the transform tool, and now I have set up basically what I did before. Let's go back to the timeline. And you can see here, if I have the peg, I can start to animate it, right? Control Z. If we press play, it is going to disappear. We've been here before. So what we need to do is expose the drawings. But you can expose both of them at the same time by selecting both, going to the end and pressing F5. So now if we press play, they exist for the entire time, right? Stop that. Make sure you are on frame 1 and have this peg selected, and put it in the position where you want to start. So we're going to start here, right? And at frame 30, we're going to rotate it to the other side. You see it automatically creates the tween. Now if I undo and change the setting, animation, stop motion keyframe, if I change that and I do the same thing, go here, do that, go to this, do this, it does not create the tween. And that is a stop motion keyframe. As the name suggests, it creates a stop motion. So the motion stops before it gets to the other keyframe, right? So it's kind of a step mode, as those in Maya might know. Step mode or non-tween mode, right? So let's turn that off because we want our tweens. And you will know that if you turn it off after you create keyframes, it only applies to the new ones. So you see it won't tween. This is an old keyframe. So if I do this, it will. So let's undo and do this again. Click the peg, go to the first frame, rotate that, got our keyframe, go to 30, rotate this, have our tween created, nice, and go to the last frame, and we're going to do what I showed you earlier. Click this, hold control, drag it to the end. So if you press play, it is a loop, but it looks disgusting, right? Because there's no ease in or ease out. So to quickly create that in Harmony 20, they give you these nice quick ease in, quick ease out shortcuts here. If you want to be precise, you can click this one, which is in all of the harmonies, doesn't matter your version. And if you click that, you can be very precise with what you're doing, right? Let's close that. But for now, we're just going to use these. So click that, quick ease in. Click that, oops, click both, quick ease out, quick ease in, and then go here, quick ease in. So if you press play, it's not ideal. It's not exactly like mine. If we click this and go to here, you can see I only set it to 33. I forgot about that. Let's set that to 50 instead. Apply next. Set these to 50. 50. Apply and close. This should look a little better now. Yeah, much better. So we have looping swinging pendulum, just like what I had in the beginning of this video. So you should be able to go back and follow the video along more closely with your own swinging pendulum and have a good time. Let me just undo all of that. There's mine. So Shift M. So that is basically what I wanted to go through for the animation tools. There's obviously a whole lot more to talk about, but this video has gone on for pretty long already. And it's time to go to apply this knowledge to your bouncing ball in the next video. Thank you for watching. I know it took a while, but this information that I shared is actually quite critical to animating in Harmony, and I know you'll put it to good use. So if you liked the video, please give me a like, and I will really appreciate it if you also share the video and subscribe if you want to see the next video in the series. So thank you and peace.